Hi, everyone. I am Maria Raquel Bossi, Senior Director of Education and International Initiatives at Film Independent. Welcome to our Producers at the Table program. I'm sitting at my home office with a big, bright red Film Independent banner in the background. I have ash blonde long hair, black rimmed glasses, and I'm wearing a black sweater. Today, I'm really excited to conclude this series with this special keynote conversation with Matthew Greenfield, president of Searchlight Pictures, who also brings to the table his experiences as an independent creative producer on his early collaborations with director Miguel Arteta in pictures such as Star Maps, Chuck and Buck, and The Good Girl. Throughout his esteemed career within the studio, Matthew has also worked alongside some of the most influential directors of our time, including Chloe Zhao, Taika Waititi, Guillermo del Toro, and Nicole Halofsener. And I couldn't think of a better moderator for this conversation than director Miguel Arteta, who has been a friend of Matthew and Film Independent for many years and has kindly accepted my invitation to lead this conversation. Welcome both of you, Miguel and Matthew. Where are you?
Hello.
Hello. It is so nice to see you both together again on a stage. We were just talking before we got on how after your first screening, after your first film, you were in screenings for Film Independent back in the day. So it's so great to see you both now from where you stand, which is a very different place than then. So before we start, I would love for both of you to describe yourselves, and then I'm going to let you then go. Matthew?
Thank you. Excuse me. I'm sitting maybe in the same living room I sat in back then. I'm the same kitchen that I sat in back then. I'm Matthew Greenfield. I'm a white man with a checked shirt and a light wood background, sitting in my kitchen, which I use as my home office for the last couple of years. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm wearing glasses.
Great. And Miguel?
Hi, I am a Latin man sitting in my kitchen with a plaid shirt, a unibrow, and some goofy glasses.
Great. So I promise this is going to be fun, but very informative as well. We are going to find everything there is to know about independent film today with these two men. So take it away, Miguel.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Matthew. How are you?
Great. Great. How are you, Miguel?
I'm doing good. I guess let's do a very quick round of how you go from loving film to becoming the head of Searchlight Studios, like really fast. What was your first film that you fell in love with? Like, do you remember the first time when you were younger, you were like, maybe this is what I want to do?
I think for me, it was more the idea of films. I kind of love them all. I'm not somebody who has a lot of like individual favorites that I just love this film and this was a transformative moment. There definitely were transformative moments. One of them was seeing Once Upon a Time in America in the Vista when it reopened in the mid 80s in LA. But I would say overall, it's more, I just began in high school I'd always spent my whole childhood going to see movies. Basically, I'd go to Westwood. I grew up in Los Angeles. I'd go to Westwood every Friday, every Saturday, every Sunday from maybe age like 12 or 13 on and watch movies. And so I always loved them. I think I began in high school to kind of think about them more broadly as art and as art and of things that could be made and how that you could be a part of. And then studied film in college with Miguel. We went to college together and started making films together, making short films together. And so it really began then. And I didn't have a strong sense of the thing in film that I would want to do or would be good at, frankly. I just knew that I was interested in being a part of it. And then kind of slowly, one of my strong suits is realizing swiftly, I think I'm not as good at. And so I kind of tried a bunch of different things and avoided the parts of it that I maybe had a passion for, but no talent for, and gravitated towards producing and to supporting other artists and helping other artists do their work. And then Miguel and I made a bunch of short films in college. We both kind of went slightly different areas of the country right after college, and I think very swiftly, both had very swift realizations that we mostly wanted to work with people that we liked and trusted. And that was the kind of best way to have a good life and fun and also do good work. And we started making star maps then in the early 90s.
That's right.
And then the short version is made star maps. We made 3 films that we took to Sundance, made independently, took to Sundance and sold there. Star Maps, Chuck and Buck, and The Good Girl. Two of them, Star Maps and The Good Girl, we sold to Searchlight, which is kind of the beginning of, at early days of Searchlight and the beginning of our relationship with Searchlight, although we knew some of the people at Searchlight from even before that when Miguel was at AFI and I was helping him make short films there. And then I worked at the Sundance Institute. I kind of got involved with the Sundance Institute. We'd been on the edges of it, and then Michelle Satter had been on the edges of the Institute for a few years, and then a woman passed away who was a part of the Writers Lab, and Michelle needed some help for a little bit, and I agreed to help for a couple of months, and ended up staying for almost 3 years working with the Writing and Directing Lab, which was an incredible, just the greatest experience and an incredible opportunity where your whole job is just how do you help people who have not yet made a feature get to make their feature, do the creative work, do the practical work, and get their first films made. And then I got a call out of the blue from one of the people that we had worked with, asking if I was interested in coming to being an executive, and I'd never, at that point, never had a real job, worked at Sundance for a little bit, been an independent producer for a long, long time, but felt my tastes were aligned, and if I was going to do it, I should jump. And then I've been here 16 years. Somehow they didn't fire me. I just kept going.
And can I ask something like working at Sundance, at the Sundance Labs, which is a very unique position because, Sundance has supported so many of the great independent filmmakers. They've been great at spotting that talent, supporting it, and helping them get to the next stage, especially helping people, I think in our audience can relate to this, making sure that your first feature film works, because it's so important to have your first thing out there really work if you want to get going in this career. So I mean, not many studio people have this perspective, to have been in a place like the Sundance Labs where like there's no the first thing they say there is like there's no business here, there's no executives, no agents, no lawyers. Please do not worry about any part of the business. It's purely take risks as artists. So I'm wondering if that, did that help you when you entered the studio system?
Yeah, I think that did help. And I think that was a similar kind of thing to producing movies together with you and making movies. I think Sundance is focused on, it's an art supporting organization, much like Film Independent, it's entirely focused on how do you help people make the best version of the movie they're trying to make. And I think that kind of belief in creative rigor was incredibly helpful, which is, you come working at Sundance, you're in a very luxurious position, which is you're not actually involved or responsible for the movies. So your only interest is how do you get the best version of whatever it is, whether that's a movie that's going to be seen by 5 people or 5 billion people. It is just a desire. The labs at Film Independent are the same. It's a great thing about both of these places. And so your goal is how do you help those people make the best version of the movie they want to make? And how do you help them creatively and push them? But it is not a place, and I think this is true of Film Independent too, these are not places that kind of coddle people, that just are supporting them regardless. They're supporting them and pushing. And I think that is a thing that I learned. I learned it first as a producer, and I learned it a lot at Sundance is the need to be rigorous and to push continuously to make something the best it can be, regardless of what it is, but do that in a way that you're working very hard to not lose what's special, what's unique, what's individual about it, what's the filmmaker's vision. You're not pushing them towards something other than the best version of their own movie, as opposed to some other platonic ideal of some kind of movie.
I think that's a big key to your success, in my opinion. Having worked with a lot of studio people, like I think that seeing that distinction, which is like, there's a different way to push an artist, you can push them towards something that you think is just commercial and then lose track of their vision. But really, you hire an artist because they have a vision. So if you can separate, what's the way to push them towards the best version of their vision, it seems like a subtle distinction, but it's a huge, I think, difference.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think it's a very important thing. And I think this is a this is about the way movies are made too, in addition to the creative part of it, which is that obviously every financial decision is also a creative decision, and vice versa in all movies, regardless of whether you're making independently or in a studio. And I think recognizing that the way people make movies that make them successful, you don't want to take Ben Zeitlin and say, I know you made Beasts of the Southern Wild one way and you're going to do it differently the next way, or Chloe Zhao, or anybody, or Guillermo, or anybody, big or small, traditional or untraditional, whatever their style is. You want to build on what they do best, as opposed to trying to take a great artist and fit them into a mold that you have done. We're not filmmakers, Searchlight. We're just suits. We're executives. We support the artists and help them do it. And so finding the way to help use what's most useful and what's really specific and beneficial to their process, and have them lead the way about their priorities is for us the goal, and leads to the best success.
Was there, when you were starting at Searchlight, and was there a film that you can remember where you were like, oh my God, I'm understanding something about the process of working as a person in the studio system, supporting these directors?
I mean, the first film that I really got made from beginning to end was Cyrus, the Duplass brothers movie, and I learned an enormous amount. They're very untraditional relative to studios, filmmakers. They had a really specific process that really informed the creative, and that was very important. And I think working with Nicole Hollister on Enough Said a couple years later, and I think I learned a lot on every. Somebody put a lot of Cyrus in the chat. I learn a lot on every film, honestly, still do today. I think that is the beauty of it, is that they're all different, and every filmmaker is different, and every filmmaker has different priorities and approaches and insights to their work and how to do it. And being a part of that for me is one of the joys of it, of learning, in seeing all the different ways and all the ways you don't expect, and all the things you don't know. And that is a incredible joy for me, and an exciting part of
it. Was your family surprised when you got this post? I remember when we made Star Match, you borrow, begged, and steal money from every relative you had to have, I think it was over $20,000 to make Star Match, which was like a huge help to us. And then we were able to pay them back, which I know you were in good books with them after that. But what was the responses from your family?
I mean, my family, my sister, oddly, is also in the business as a photographer and a filmmaker herself, but our parents and the rest of our family are academics and not in the business, and so it's somewhat foreign to them, except for through our experiences. I mean, one of my parents recently, I've been at Searchlight for 16 years, and I've been making movies since the early 90s, and doing it full time since then. One of my parents just recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, said, "Oh, I didn't realize this was going to be a career for you." And I was a little confused how they could not have realized that, but I think I have the good fortune of having parents who are incredibly supportive, and supportive in a both specific and general sense, in that it's not their world, it's not their business. They love it. They're fans of art. They're fans of quality, and they're supportive even when it's not the path that they know or are used to. And both my sister and I really benefited from that kind of never-ending support, even when it was slightly confusing to them. But nobody, I mean, I had no idea that I would end up, when I started Searchlight, I was 38 when it was really my first real job in a sense. And I really did not believe I would last. I thought I would get fired fairly swiftly, that they would realize that I was not the person for this job. And so I'm very grateful that didn't happen, and feel very lucky to be here, and also constantly surprised to be here, and grateful for it.
Well, I'm incredibly proud of you, having met you in the halls of Wesleyan University while we were making musicals about French fries, and here you are running really the most vibrant independent studio that's still
but it's all the same. I think I'm still trying to do that same thing, which is make movies that we love and that work for an audience and that the audience can love. And I think for us, it starts in very much the same way, regardless of scale, for our smaller movies, our bigger movies, for all the different kinds of things we do all across all genres, across all different kinds of things, which is trying to do stuff that the filmmaker, the writer and or director, or if they're the same person, the filmmaker is passionate about, that we can become passionate about, that the actors will become passionate about, and then collectively we can make the audience passionate about it. And that is what drives all of the thinking, really, and all of our desires. And that's exactly the same as it was when we were making short films, and when we were making Star Maps and Chuck and Buck and The Good Girl too. It's the same regardless of scale, I think, and I think the same thing over time. It's what we're all striving for.
Having had your support as a producer, I know how fantastic it is to have your passion and support behind when I'm making movies, and how specifically you think about like balancing the logistics versus the artistic, and what Jerry Lewis called the intangibles of filmmaking. And so seeing you with this, working with several directors several times, I am not surprised at all to see that you're, like somebody that they feel, you get them. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of your more pleasurable relationships with directors now? I
mean, I find them all pleasurable. Honestly, I just find that I feel very lucky to be doing it, and I think the wonderful thing, certainly, that I feel about Searchlight, I've never worked anywhere else. I hope it's true everywhere else, is that we have a lot of different people here that of all ages and experiences, and everybody relates to different filmmakers. Different people have different kinds of connections. So even I have a partner in work, David Greenbaum. They're filmmakers that he develops a very personal connection with immediately from the first moment. And there's people that I do, and they tend to be different people. And I think that's the strength of one of the strengths of our company, which is we're really happy for it to, like, we're trying to all have as good relationships as possible with filmmakers. But for me, working with artists is kind of the greatest thing. I'm not one myself. Something I swiftly realized I had no talent for, but desire for when I was young. And I feel like, in some sense, it's like being an editor at one of the, in the 30s, 40s, and 50s in book publishing, or somebody you can kind of work with great artists. You can support them in what they do. You can help them around the edges and push and support to help bring their work to the biggest audiences possible around the world. And that for me, so there are no filmmakers that I've worked with that I don't love and want to work with again. And some we've had more opportunity and others not, but it is great. And the variety for me, it's one of the, I love Miguel and I worked together for many, many years. That was a great joy and an incredible thing. One of the incredible things in the second, more recent part of my career is the range of filmmakers that I get to work with, and writers and actors and all the different people in all different crafts too. I have an incredible luxury of working with an enormous number of talented people, all of who have specific perspectives, different points of view, different ways of working. We often work with filmmakers who are like, I like this movie you did, but I hate this one you did. Or we send them a script and they say, why would you ever make this movie? And then another filmmaker says, this is the thing I've been dreaming of. And that range and that variety is just an excellent thing about movies, I think.
How do you, when you notice that a director is having difficulty, feeling insecure, feeling overwhelmed, how do you identify and how do you help a director?
I mean, for us, a lot has to do also with the producer. Like, we're partners with the producer too, and that's an incredibly important relationship from the studio perspective that I think is underrated and maybe honestly undervalued, which is that we're several steps back. We're not involved on a moment-to-moment or day-to-day level. We're not involved that directly sometimes. So especially during production, but even during prep and during development and during writing, the producer is much, much more directly involved in every detail and every moment with the director. And I think we rely heavily on the producers, and we function best when the producers are are that person for the director, and we can support them and we can push, and the producers can also give us advice and say, this is a good time to have a conversation, this is not a good time to have a conversation, can you wait, and have that dialogue to kind of figure out, because obviously one of the most important things is that question of when is the time and when is not the time for any given thing, to push, to be supportive, to ask questions, to give notes, or whatever that thing is a big puzzle that has to be figured out, and a big challenge is knowing how to do this in a productive and useful way. And I think our partnership with the producers is when it goes well, is something that's incredibly useful and effective in that. And honestly, they're doing most of that work. We're doing a little bit on the sides, but they're doing the real work, and we're kind of kibitzing from the sides.
I think that's very important for all those people listening to this panel. If you want to be a director, partnering with the right producer is far more important than you might think, because of course you can have producers whose job is mainly to get you a budget and get you the financing, but having a creative producer, which is becoming rarer and rarer, is like kind of a huge key to success.
Yes, and somebody who can be honest with you, so that even in the bad things, even in the places they don't agree, even the things that the director doesn't want to hear. It doesn't mean that the director should always listen to them. Nobody should always listen to anybody all the time, but it's important to have people that will push and stand up for what they believe in and add to the conversation, so you can kind of figure out the right path through.
Yeah,
and we certainly don't have all the ideas either. I think our approach tends to be one that's kind of, the old adage, as my grandfather, who was in insurance, used to say, is if three people are drunk, you should lie down. It doesn't even mean you're definitely drunk. It just means something. If three people tell you something's going on, and you should examine it, and you should figure out why they're saying that. And I think that is true. And I think producers can be very, very helpful in that process, and help guide the conversations, and help guide the areas that have to be dug into more deeply and explored more completely, or that just aren't working, and you have to help find a solution for. And we're much better at helping from the studio side, at helping to identify the problems than helping to offer solutions. We're not writers, we're not directors, we're not those people. And so I think we're better at kind of saying, here's an area we think should be looked at, than saying, here's the solution you should do, or here's the path you should choose.
I do think that you're uniquely positioned, having been a producer, a creative producer, for 3 films, that were difficult to get made, and then to have been working at the Sundance Lab, where you're focusing on vision and story and script. These are 2 sides of what it means to get movies made the proper way. Can I ask you, when you landed at Searchlight, then there was the whole aspect to making movies, which is to market them and publicize them. Was that area new to you? Was that surprising?
Yes, that area is very new to me, and it took a really long time. I mean, it took years for me to even begin to learn that area, and so it was a very slow. I since I wasn't in that area at the beginning, I was a production like a creative executive. I had kind of I could see it as I started to make movies, and within Searchlight, about the process that the kind of marketing team went through too, in terms of how to sell it and how to approach it, and begin to learn how to think about those things in useful ways at the beginning of the process, not just at the end of the process, but also not let those things determine the creative process either. And so I've learned that kind of slowly over time, and I'm still learning it, honestly. And that's a big change from my move with David from being heads of production to being heads of the whole company. Is now we oversee marketing as well, and so that's a whole area that we're still honestly learning. And we work with an incredible team, the best in the business, I believe, in that front on all sides of marketing and distribution. And it is an endless thing, but it is crucial and important. And I think we work really hard to find the ways to market the movies, to get people in to see the movies so they can enjoy them, but also to do that in a way that is, honest and truthful to what the movies are, to not missell things or pretend that there's something different, and to find the way to find that path, which is different for every movie, that is an honest and authentic kind of representation of the movie, and gets people into the seats so that they can actually enjoy enjoy the movies. And so it is a tricky thing. It's also like the process of making movies. It is different for the path is different for every movie. The strategy is different for every movie. The process is different for every movie. There's some movies where the campaigns and the way you're going to sell it and the story you're going to tell about the movie is clear from the moment you decide to make the movie. And there's other ones where you discover it in the middle of the process. And then there's some where you put the movie out and you're still discovering new things about it. And I think like the process of making movies, you discover what, when we make a movie, when anybody makes a movie, when all of you make movies, there's things you love and there's things you hate. There's scenes that you speak to you or lines that you find funny or moving. There's things that leave you cold and you don't respond to. And then you sit there with an audience and you find that half or 3/4 of those other people do too. And then there's things that they love that don't speak to you. And there's things that you think are the funniest thing in the world that nobody else laughs at. And that process of seeing both the things that you expect and that you feel are the things that will speak to people and the things that you don't expect is a process in the making of the movies. It's also a process in the marketing of movies. You find things that people latch onto and discover and love about movies that you didn't expect, and things that you thought were the thing that was going to galvanize people that are not, and you move to something different. And so all these are kind of ways in which you can kind of learn in the process for how to best connect with the audience.
Well, this leads me to like, where are we now? And if we're going to help young producers and directors and writers out there, like things are changing in the independent landscape. Like Searchlight is standing strong. You have managed to, as a company, to figure out how to connect those niche films with audiences, both at big hits and then smaller ones that are just, they're good films that maybe they're medium-sized successes. And whereas most of the industry is not being able to do this. So what would you say to young filmmakers and writers to say what they should be thinking about to get their movies made in this changing landscape?
I mean, I think there's no secret answer to that. And I certainly don't have, a real answer other than making it the best that it can be. I think that is the key. The most important thing is whatever movie you're making, whether you're making a broad comedy or a drama or something in between, a prestige movie or a wacky, silly comedy, whatever it is, the only way you can survive is making the best version of that you can make, and making it uncynically and with love and care and attention to detail and as much rigor as you can muster from the beginning of the process to the end of the process to make that movie work for the audience the best way that it can work. And I think setting yourself up for that is a way to set yourself up for success. I think we live in a world where there's such an insane volume of things being made, of all things being made, all media of all kinds. We're no longer just competing with the 4 or 5 movies that came out on any given weekend. Now we're competing at every moment with every movie, every TV show, every piece of music, every music video, every short, every YouTube thing that has ever been made to get people's attention. And I think because of that, the thing that stands out is quality. And I think and quality as defined by each of you and each of the filmmakers you work with, the people that you're doing it. It's not some generic definition of it. I think it's just making that we live in a world where the things that survive are only the things that capture people's attentions and capture their hearts and their minds, feel exciting to them and feel interesting to them, I think, in a way that is not kind of good enough, I would say. Is my wife talks about this sometimes. She used to talk about this. She got a PhD a little while ago and talked about the fact that if in the PhD program, if you get a B+, that's essentially the equivalent of an F. Like you're probably never going to actually get to the finish line with it if you just get a B+. And I think a lot about that in terms of what we do. And obviously you can't quantify things as A's or B's or whatever, but I do think for me, it's helpful in thinking of that, which is like, things are either great, or if they're just good, they're going to get lost in a sea of stuff. And that's a tragedy because so many things can be great. And I think sticking with it, I think one of the biggest challenges with any film, and I see it a lot, and I know you see it, Miguel, I'm sure all of you see it, as people who spend 5 years, 10 years working on a project, writing it, casting it, willing it into existence, finding the money, figuring out how to get it made. and they do all that work, and then they get into post and they do 2 cuts of the movie, and they run out of the money that they had budgeted and are like, well, I guess I'm done. And the movie's just not there for whatever reason. That's a total normal part of the process. But I think not giving up in post is essential when it's necessary. And I think sticking with it at every stage to make each thing, every incremental increase in quality from your own perspective, of making the movie that you want to make, is going to pay off really dramatically and worth every effort you can give.
I think, taken from what you're saying, 3 things that I think are really important for people to highlight. Like, I mean, first of all, I've heard this expression that I think helps young people, and helps me to this day, which is like, the universe has 0 interest on your movie being born. 0 interest. And if you wake up in the morning and you think that otherwise, that the universe has an interest, you're sunk. You have to begin every day knowing that the universe doesn't have any interest in your movie being born. You have to will it every day. And so, like, when you mentioned passion and like something that you very specific, you said be specific about your passion. I think that's the thing that will help. These things that nobody's gonna. That's what helps them get there. And then also, when you say to not be cynical, I think is really important, because if you're trying to calculate, like what might work in this changing landscape, if you're, which is in some ways being cynical, I think you're going to run into problems. I agree with you. And then thirdly, the post. Most movies suffer, independent films, if somebody has found something lovely to say, they have willed it into existence, which takes an average of 7 years. And then in post, most people leave it 3/4 ways baked, not fully baked. And I think you and I learned that, it's not that our movies were like, that brilliant to begin with, but we were tenacious in post to make sure that, like our first movie, we edited for 13 months, I believe. And I remember us telling investors, like, tell us any movie you like and we'll tell you how long it was edited. And like, you mention any exciting independent movie and they have been edited for 8 months,
and occasionally you'll have something that comes together very quickly. It just depends. It's just quality. And for us on that movie, on Star Maps, it wasn't that it was good and we were just like relentlessly trying to make it great. It was that it was bad. And we were trying to like not have ruined our lives and make it the best it could be. And so it is. I think that's right. I mean, I think if you do 2 things as you think about the movies you're making and you think about the movies you love, every one of us, every individual out there, about the movies you love, and what about those movies turns you on, what makes you excited to see them. Those are the things that you want to inspire in other people. You want people to think about your movies in those ways. And back for me, I found it super illuminating. There's a chart that you can kind of find on the internet if you want about PhDs, about what it means to do a PhD. And I find the chart super illuminating and also relevant to what we're all trying to achieve. Although it's very, very difficult in art, I would say. But the chart is basically a big circle, which is supposed to represent, and the chart, if you find it online, is specifically about what does it mean to do a PhD. But it's a big circle that in that context represents all of human learning, all of human knowledge. And it starts at the center of that giant circle with like what you learn in elementary school, what you learn in high school, what you learn in college, what you learn when you're in a master's program. And each time you're getting kind of further out to the edge and closer and closer. And as you get to the end of the PhD program, you're touching right to the edge of the limits of human knowledge. But that to actually get a PhD, you have to create a little bump on the outside of that. You have to expand in some way, even by the tiniest amount, the limits of human knowledge. You have to add something to the knowledge of the world. And I do think that's like the goal. It's very difficult, but I think that's the goal. And if you think about the movies you love, they all have added something to the discourse, whether it's a level of complexity or character or a different character or a shade of character or emotion or story or plot or visual storytelling or whatever the thing. And I think that's true if it's a broad comedy, that's true if it's a drama. It's not about genre, it's not about being fancy, but the things that we all love are things that have something about them, even if it's one piece or one moment, that feels unique and specific and adding to our knowledge of life and art and ourselves, or whatever the thing is. I think it can be in any dimension, basically, and things that don't feel familiar. And I think familiarity is really, it's tough to get anybody excited about things that feel familiar.
I call it the tyranny of fine. When people say it's fine.
Yeah.
When I hear it fine so many times in the filmmaking process, I'm like, you're killing me with the tyranny of fine. Fine is
exactly
not what we're doing here. But I think that's a great way to look at it, which goes to the idea that, like, don't imitate, like if you want to tell a story that adds to the discourse that feels original, you're going to have to really trust the way you see people. I
think that's right. And I don't think it means you can't take and borrow from things that have been done. I don't think it means there's no generic or outside idea of what those limits are. I think these are all very personal things. I think it depends on each person and their point of view and how it is. I don't think there's no arbitrary explanation of what these things are. It's your own feeling about and the filmmakers you're working with, and the feelings you're trying to inspire on the audience, that is kind of how to see those things that you're trying to kind of push through, even subtly. And I don't think being different for different sake is that helpful. I think it has to be about things that speak to people, that are meaningful and speak to people.
That come from life, really, I think. But you're right. I mean, every artist has to incorporate, even the most original people, a form, and then find a way to make it new.
Yeah.
But how do you search? Do you guys search for the new indie director stars? How do you go about that?
Yeah, we're interested in working with people at every phase of their career. And so we work with first-time filmmakers. We have more opportunity now than we ever have had before to work with first-time filmmakers. We work with really established filmmakers. We work with everything in between. We do quite a lot, I would say, with people who have made one or two independent films and then making their first studio film. That's a very common place for us to be, and something we love to do. But we also work with people who are literally making their first film, and then we work with a lot of people who have made a lot of films. And so for us, we're interested in the full range. I think it's we don't set any. I think a lot of people look at Searchlight and say, you guys do this, or you guys do that, or you're in prestige business, or you're this or that. For us, ourselves, we don't have any of those definitions. We don't have any of those limits. We have an incredibly wide appetite of all kinds of movies. We love the movies with the Broken Lizard, people who've made Super Troopers and Super Troopers 2, and we're making another movie with them right now. We love Ab Fab the movie. We also love Nightmare Alley, Guillermo's movie that is coming out in December, or The French Dispatch, Wes Anderson's movie, or 3 Billboards. We just shot another movie with Martin McDonagh. And we're making another movie, Yorgos Lanthimos. We love the full range of them, big movies, small movies. For us, it's about the filmmaker, their vision, and the movie itself, as opposed to any other kind of outside limit on that. And we've had the level of success we have has no relationship to the budget of the movie. We've had great success with our biggest budgeted movies, and we've had great success with things like Nomad Land, one of our smallest budgeted movies, and everything in between. And there's no correlation between the scale of the budget and the scale of the audience.
Well, this leads to I think you cut through, I think, in a really smart way about, like, when we talk what's the climate today with streaming and podcasts, and there's people watching content on YouTube. How difficult it is to know theatrical windows versus no theatrical windows. Everybody's very upset about this. And I think you cut through that conversation in a way that I find very interesting, which is like, you're trying to get the audience attention, and there's competition in everywhere. And like, in some ways, don't think about, theatrical versus streaming. What's the window? Is this, like just find a way to capture the audience imagination in a uncynical way, and hopefully, and be excellent, and hopefully right?
I think that's right. And I think marketing is a big piece of it. And honestly, we're just at the beginning of that journey. We're just beginning to make streaming movies. But for me, I love I love sitting in theaters. I love the theatrical experience. I really believe in it. I really believe that movies take patience, and you can't have that patience in the same way at home, and that can be very difficult. But I also believe that that every movie that has ever been made essentially has had more people watch it at home than in theaters, even the big blockbusters at the end of the day. It's certainly true, especially in movies over time. And so it is natural that people watch some movies at home and they watch some movies in theaters. They have urgency to watch them sooner or later. Different people have different perspectives on all this kind of stuff. The reality is people are going to do both. I think it's really important to do both. Searchlight is doing both. We're making movies for theatrical. We're making movies for streaming. I think the really key part of it has to do a lot with marketing, which is you have to, and I don't think this is, I think this is still a work in progress. I think we did it kind of successfully in one sense with Nomad Land, which is a movie that because of the pandemic, it was released ultimately day and date on Hulu. It had a brief theatrical exclusive IMAX run, and then Hulu day and date with theaters, but theaters were closed in LA and New York at the time it was released, kind of at the height of the pandemic. And so most people saw it on Hulu. But it was marketed like a traditional movie. And I think the thing that we have to do collectively as an industry is make sure that regardless of the distribution method, whether it's theatrical or streaming or hybrid or day and date or whatever the millions of different iterations there are now and will come, is that that people understand why these movies are important to them. They understand how they relate to their lives and why they should watch them. That they are given a context for why they should watch them and how they can relate to them, and they see them in that context so that they stick in their imagination and they stay with them, and that they stay in their in the kind of collective, they kind of resonate in the collective imagination and stay in the culture. And I think that's something that is less achieved right now streaming, but will over time, I think, figure out how to, all of us collectively figure out how to do that better. And I think that is as important as any other aspect of it. That the way you see a movie is very important, and I think all the different versions of it are crucial. And I personally want to have the ability to go see every movie I want to go see. I love to see them theatrically, and I also watch a lot of movies at home, and I want both of those experiences. And I think it's more about the way we connect with the audiences than about the specificities of the kind of movie. Just like it's not, as much as I love different formats and widescreen and 4:3 and 70 and 35 millimeter and all the different things, I think they're all important. I think they're all really crucial storytelling elements, and I think that's a really important thing, which is the way in which the form helps tell the story. And I think that is crucial to all of these things. That's true of color and black and white and all the variations of it. These are part of the storytelling experience, and I think theatrically is a big part of that too. But I think beyond the aspects of it that are a storytelling experience, I think finding the ways to make events feel communal, to make people feel like you're in a group of people experiencing art and that you have the focus, I think is a big part of it to really experience it.
Now, Searchlight has started a television division, correct? And when you say about getting into the streaming business, are you starting a new deal in which you can release movies?
Well, it's not really a new deal in that we're making movies now for Hulu, which is a part of our company. So it's really more, it's a different method of distribution from within our company. Searchlight has a real wonderful position of being a part of a much bigger company. So we do our own thing. We have within Searchlight our own production and development, physical production, post, all those parts of it. We also have our own marketing and our own distribution, all within the Disney company, and works extremely closely with the other parts of the company. And so it's tailored to the Searchlight movies, but distributed and kind of within all the different avenues within the broader company. And so we started this process, and I would say we're at the beginning of this journey, but we're in a process where we're making basically the same number of theatrical movies we've always made, of all different sizes, all different kinds, just like we've always done. And then we're adding to it a bunch of movies that will be direct to streaming, and that will be to Hulu. But those movies will still be made and marketed by Searchlight. And so they're Searchlight movies through and through. In partnership with Hulu, they'll be original to Hulu and exclusive to Hulu, and that is great too. And we will also do theatrical movies, and over time those will end up on Hulu as well, until there'll be a big kind of Searchlight presence there. But we're doing both, and for us, it's an incredible opportunity. The process of the kinds of movies, the way you can connect with an audience. There's a lot of overlap. There's some movies that can exist very successfully in both worlds. There's some movies that are going to be better theatrically, and there's some movies that are going to be better on streaming. And now we have more opportunity to do a wider range of movies, to do things that fit all those different things. And also the economics are different for each of them. And so there are things that economically make more sense theatrically, and there's things that economically will make more sense for everybody streaming. And that, for us, gives us the opportunity not to have to pass on a movie because of the economics, because we don't have a way to kind of fit that in to make sense in the system.
When I'm what I'm thinking is like, Searchlight has always had a mandate of like, let's do something, a movie, content that's more original. I started with movies that are more original. Now our world has gone, to have many ways of releasing or getting content to people. And then what you guys have done is like, okay, we're going to expand with that. We're going to make original things in television and streaming television, original things for the niche theater. And now we're also going to do original things that we will market in the same way, these movies that have something extra for streaming. So you're like, kind of moving with the times, which is like, we want to keep the same mandate, but we will be open to all the platforms that are opening up, right?
Yeah, I think we wanna. It comes, and that expansion has come, and it's come in stages in some sense over time. And that we first started expanding into TV, then we started doing short films, and we won an Oscar for a short film a few years ago, and we release short films now as well, and now into streaming movies. For us, we know the filmmakers we want to work with and that we love. And are making things in all those areas, are working in all those areas, and we feel like, why can't we want to be a part of that? It's really driven by that. We don't see any reason why we should artificially limit ourselves to one form or another form, when the filmmakers we're working with, the writers, the directors, the actors, the producers that we're working with are working in all of them. And if we can figure out a way within our company, which we have now, to do that, we're eager to work with them on all things that they are interested in, and be able to be a home, both a home for any individual filmmaker in any direction that they want to go, but also for new filmmakers, and to meet people through we can meet people through their short films, we can meet people through their television work, we can meet people through their features, and then we can work with them in all the other areas too. And so our goal is to kind of meet the artists where they are and help bring their work to the audiences in whatever format they're working.
I have one last question before we go to the audience's questions, which is, what's the last feature film you've watched from beginning to end?
Well, I saw West Side Story the other night, which I really liked. The new West Side Story, the Spielberg. Yeah. And I'm trying to remember what the last one was before that. I really liked it. I found it thrilling. The dancing and incredible performances. And I saw, I have not been in a lot of movie theaters because of the pandemic. And so for me, Telluride was like an incredible experience, in that it was the first time I'd been back in a theater in quite a long time. And so though I'd been watching movies at home and occasionally in screening rooms and things like that, being able to sit in a theater and watch with an audience was just a magical experience. And the movies that I saw there was so many that I saw that were incredible, but that include Come On, Come On, and King Richard, and Hand of God, and Power of the Dog. And there were others too, I can't even remember. Those were just all, for me, I love those movies, and kind of moving experiences to be sitting in a theater again with audiences. And so, anytime I can kind of immerse myself in that, it's just great.
Okay, so here are some questions from the audience.
This is where it gets real.
Yeah. Like a movie like Spotlight, which is based on a true story, do you take chances over monetary payback?
I mean, I think it's a very, first of all, we all, Spotlight is a movie that we didn't make, and we probably could have, and it's a movie that we specifically internally, David and I especially, talk about a lot of, like, that's a mistake that we weren't involved, and we should have been and could have been. And we had made Win-Win with Tom McCarthy, we love, and we know the people participate very well, and Jonathan King and all the people there, and so that I think is a movie that we would have a mistake that we didn't do. I wish we had done it. I'm jealous of that. I love that movie. I think for us, it's not about the financial versus not financial in a sense, but I think we do try to balance. Our general philosophy is we want to manage the financial risk so that we can lean into the creative risk. And I think that's the way we try to approach it. That's a very subjective thing, obviously, but we try to manage the financial risk so that we make movies without fear. We can take creative risks. We can lean into those risks, and we can make movies at a scale at which we can do it without fear. And that fear being tends to be one of not having to reach everybody. But if you make a movie on a more modest budget and you control the budget, you can make choices that are riskier. That we know will satisfy a kind of a core audience or a specific audience or a portion audience. And then in success, if you make it great, you can reach everybody. And they certainly did that on Spotlight. I think we were striving for that in Nomad Land. We strive for that on things like Jojo Rabbit and all that, and Shape of Water and Three Billboards and The Favorite and on and on again for us. Those are examples that we use. But I think for us, it's more about trying to have the financial risk and the creative risk be in line with each other so that the financial risk doesn't make it so they're afraid to take creative risks.
Okay, that's cool. Here's another question. How important is it to have a relationship with the executives at a Searchlight or any studio prior to getting a project into development or production?
Well, I think all, I think having relationships and having and building trust with people is the key to everything. Having honest and authentic relationships with people and trust with them. I think that's important with your colleagues. That's important with the people around you, side by side you, above you, below you, in different categories, in different groups, in different parts of the business. I think having those kinds of relationships helps. We're all trying to make things that are not necessarily clear in a short log line or even sometimes on the page without being able to express the filmmaker's vision and the movie that we're trying to make and what we're striving for. And the more you have a relationship and a relationship that's built on trust and where you know each other, the more you can express what you're trying to do and have it be heard in the proper way, I think, and have people believe it and trust you and know. And so I think the more you have relationships with everybody, that's just as true when you find your mixer or when you try to make a deal for a stage or whatever, that if you already have a relationship and you kind of trust each other and know what you're aiming for, it tends to work out better. And so it's not a requirement. We certainly make movies all the time with people we've never met before on all levels. But I think good relationships only help people.
Certainly learning how to build trust with anybody is a key to, this is a very collaborative.
Yeah, we're all in it together. And the more we all know each other, the better that goes. Now, sometimes you have to get to know each other quickly on the fly, and that works really well too. And so it's not that one is possible and not possible. It helps the process, I think, and makes everybody feel, the more trust there is already, the less you have to spend energy building that trust in the process.
Okay, here's another question. How do you identify new strategies to reach the younger Gen Z audiences nowadays, especially reaching them on social platforms?
I mean, it's a work in progress, I would say. And I think, we're constantly looking at what we're doing and seeing if it's working and trying to pivot and continue to learn from it. I don't think there's one answer except for that it's important for us. And I think it's all the more important for us as we make streaming movies. We have access for Searchlight in particular. The movies we make, our traditional theatrical audience has not been the super young audience as a first audience. It's been an audience that's come to our films after we've had some amount of success often. So they're an audience we reach, but they tend not to be the first people that our films speak to. When we're making movies for streaming and other things like that, they can be and they will be the first audience. And that for us is an exciting development and an audience we're excited to reach and to do more to reach out to and to speak to directly.
Okay, here is a more from the business side of things. How has Disney acquiring Searchlight changed your slate, the way you work?
It has not changed. I don't think it has changed either there's no kind of Disney is a great partner for us. I guess let me just say that they don't impose anything. They don't tell us what to do or not to do. They're incredible partners. We've always, Searchlight has always kind of reported in technically on a practical level to the chairman of the studio, Fox in the past, and now of Disney. The people at Disney, Alan Bergman, Alan Horn, who we report to most directly, they love what we do. They kind of take the same approach we do, which is we do stuff that's very different from other parts of Disney. They value it. They trust us. They like what we do. They like the kinds of things we do. They believe in the kinds of risks that we're taking, and they support that. And they do the same thing we try to do with our executives and with the producers we're working with and the filmmakers, which is they ask questions and they inquire and they try to help us make them better and help us make the best version of each of those movies that we can. And they do that in a supportive and productive way for us. And so we're I think incredibly lucky, honestly, is we have a parent company that values and supports us and encourages us to do what makes Searchlight feel like Searchlight.
I mean, and in some ways, isn't it a great news in that because of the Hulu deal, you're going to be able to make more movies, right?
Yes. And we had long, even before the merger, we had long within Searchlight wanted to figure out a way to have streaming as a component of it. For a lot of technical business reasons, it was very, very difficult in the past. And so it's something we'd been really desirous of. Now we have it in spades. We have a lot of opportunity there. And so it gives us an even wider range of movies and an even wider range of kinds of movies, of ways we can connect with the audiences and different audiences we can connect with. And so it's a huge boon and frankly, a great show of confidence from within Disney of us being kind of becoming a big supplier of movies to Hulu.
I think it's a smart way to think about this. That it's not that Disney has bought Searchlight and so Searchlight has become corporate. I don't see it that way. I feel like the climate for original content is getting really tough. And to have a huge conglomerate that supports having that voice and can take more risks because not all of their income comes from that, it's a good thing, especially when they're asking you to, increase your output. Making more movies for a company like Searchlight is good news for all independent filmmakers, Yeah,
I think we've always tried to do things that feel right for Searchlight and to argue and advocate for the movies that we love and the way we want to make movies and the way we care about. That's always been true. We've always been part of a broader, bigger corporate parent. Searchlight has never as a company been a standalone company separate. So we've always worked within the framework of a bigger company. Disney has been just a tremendous and great process for us. We love the people there and they're incredibly supportive. And for us, that support from a much bigger, broader company is actually really useful without ever being intrusive.
Here, there's a couple of questions that relate. Somebody's saying, as a former producer and now head of a studio, do you believe that the importance of giving a rising producer is just as crucial as giving that to rising directors?
Yes, I mean, and we've had a lot of conversations about that recently, especially like for us, that's like the area that has not been given. Sundance is doing it now. Film Independent is doing it now. I years ago led the first producers lab at Film Independent. It is an area that needs more attention and more support because the industry as a whole has put much more focus on how do we kind of help directors learn their craft and start at the beginning. And I think when we have great producers, it adds enormous amount of value to movies, and we have a lot of them, but we need even more. And so it's a huge focus, for us. Somebody else was asking, should a project have a creative producer on board once, when they come to you, or is that something that you will package for them? We kind of take things as they come to us. We're not, we get involved with things at every stage, and with every combination of people attached or not people attached. So for us, it's more, we're happy to have a person already involved, have a producer already involved. That's great for us. We're also happy to work with the filmmaking team and help find the right partner for them too. We do both and are very happy either way. For us, it's about making sure we're kind of building the right team, and that can come to us pre-built and pre-made, and that's great, or we can help be a part of it. And good either way and are happy to do it. And we do it both ways all the time.
A few people are asking, do you accept scripts and develop projects with filmmakers without a formal introduction or somebody knowing you in the company?
Yeah, I mean, I'm now that I'm part of oversee the broader company as a whole. I'm less involved in the very first stages of which projects we develop and make. Now the heads of production are Dan Chemnwin and Katie Goodson Thomas, and they have an incredible team that has been expanding as we've been expanding the number of movies we're making. And so they're the kind of first line of looking at projects. We look at projects at every phase: pitches, articles, books, ideas, first drafts of scripts, final drafts of scripts, package, not package, at every stage, acquisitions, obviously, as well. And so we come on board and look at projects at every stage. I think the thing that we have a really strong philosophy, which is we're really happy to kind of engage in a dialogue with projects, even at a very early stage. And if we don't get involved, it's not for us a judgment on the project in any way. And we do not believe in the kind of old adage, which is you have one shot and then you're done. For us, times change, our perspective changes, the films change, the drafts change, the package change, the world changes, the audience change. And so we have many movies where we said, not for us at the moment, at the beginning stage, and we got involved at a slightly later stage, or we got involved at a much later stage just before production, or we acquired the movie afterwards. For us, it's all those things are possible. It's just kind of trying to find what's the right moment that is the right moment for us and the right moment for the filmmakers that we can all choose to kind of link arms and work together. And that's different for every project.
Here's a question. What percentage of older women work with you in all aspects of your companies?
I mean, I'm definitely not going to define what is an older woman. I know I'm an older man, but I will only speak for myself. I don't have actually numbers on that. I would say I know that Searchlight, I think as a whole, is 60-something% women. It's definitely a majority women. Exactly what percentage, I don't know. What the ages of those people are, I don't actually know offhand. We're happy to work with people at all ages, at all points in their career. We have people who are at the very beginnings of their career. We have people who are incredibly experienced. We have people who got that experience other places, and we have a lot of people that have been working at Searchlight. A good portion of the company, I've been at Searchlight for 16 years now. There's a not a small portion of the company that was there when I started. And so we're, and there's new people that come in all the time of all ages and all experiences. And we love that. We're eager for the widest ranges of experiences and points of view that we can have internally. It helps us, make the best movies and guide people and work with the greatest filmmakers.
So what would be your advice for a young writer, director right now that is coming to, is starting and has no connections to the industry?
I mean, I think forging relationships, somebody asked that question about forging relationships with executives. I think forging relationships is the key. I think that is not something that you should say, I'm going to forge relationships in this area and not in that area. I think you want to do it in every area. So forging relationships with producers, with creative partners, DPs, production editors, etc., forging relationships with executives. The more you can kind of forge relationships, the more you can find things that will happen. And the more those people getting invested in your success and believing in you are the things that will lead to it. So as you find people, you never know who's that person. Miguel had at the beginning of his career a mechanic who was like, oh, I think Jonathan Demme would like your work, and put him in touch with Jonathan Demme, who happened to be his cousin by marriage or something like that. And I think the more you can forge relationships in any direction, the more you will find the people who want to support you, who believe in your work and believe in what you do, and will help you. And I think that's the key, whether you're in the industry or not in the industry, whether you have previous connections in the industry or you don't, whether you're in LA or not in LA or New York or anywhere in the world. I think the more you create relationships, the more people the more of a community you can build to do that. And that can be a really LA-based community, or it can be like David Lowery, who built a kind of Houston-based community, and many other filmmakers in all different parts of the country and all different parts of the world.
The advice I give all my assistants and young people is to say, I always tell them, make one movie a month for a year, Make them bad. It doesn't matter. Don't make them as far away from a calling card. The pressure of making a short movie that you think is going to be your calling card to get work is, you will never find your voice. It's too overwhelming. So I always tell them, make 12 movies, one a month, and the importance is quantity, not quality. And take risks. So you'll find out what works for you. And I recommended this to a few people, like Ruben Fleischer, who was my assistant, and he did it.
He did it. He made hundreds and hundreds of films.
Yeah.
And he's done great well for himself.
Yes. But what I have found out, and many assistants have done it and done very well, is that it also helps them build those relationships. Because when you're starting, you can't make the relationships with the people that are already quite successful. But what happened to people like Ruben and my assistants is they started to make these movies that, they weren't supposed to be super refined and slick. There's just like, I just want to shoot a scene this month. So you're forced to go and find who's going to help you do that for free. And so who are the people that will help you do it for free? Are the people who are go-getters and independent thinkers and people who have that drive. So by the time like Ruben made his 10th short, he was like, oh my God, all the people that I've been asking for help who have volunteer help, we're all doing well and supporting each other. Like I've met the right people. I've met the go-getters. I met the people that are like independent thinkers. Yeah. And so I think that's a way to build relationships. Don't think only about building relationships with the people that are already successful. Just start making things and see who comes to you. Who's like, I'm happy to make a thing for no good reason. Yeah, I'm that kind of person. Yeah,
I think that's right. And those people can be people that have as much experience as you. They can have less experience than you. They can have more experience than you. They can be the full range. And I think if you think about it, like there's a lot of people that talk on the executive side about, and David, who I work with, did this. He started as a temp and then became an assistant, and he worked his way up within the system to be an executive and then a more senior executive, et cetera. He has relationships with all these people that he was kind of in the trenches as assistants with. And now 10 or 15 years later, or whatever it is for him, they've all kind of grown up in the business, for lack of a better word. That's just as true. That one way to do it is a really valuable and effective way to do it. It's just as true by making things with people and having them. And so all these people that Ruben was an assistant on our movies. There's all these people that we worked with 10 and 15 years ago in all different positions who are at the beginning of their career, who are now masters of the genre, and people who are at the heights of their professions, people that came in on Star Maps and did a day of shooting because we lost our cinematographer a day, and they came and shot one day, and now they're nominated for Oscars and things like that. I think that's true at all levels. And I think you want to find people that you collaborate with, that you connect with, that you have a similar vision with of a creative vision, of life, a vision of how do you want to work together, about how you want to work with people, how you want to treat people. And when you find those people in whatever areas, then you will all grow over time. And you also might find those people who are in a place to help you right away, or you might find people that you can help right away, or vice versa. And you might find people that will help you 10 years later. And all those things are true. But I think you're right, which is just doing stuff and working with people and building relationships with people in all directions. You can never plot out which are the things that are going to be valuable to you and which are the things that are going to be useful to you.
Yeah, you find people who share similar priorities with you. And one priority you have to be a storyteller in film or TV is that you have to be willing to get up and just do it.
Yeah.
And like,
that's right.
You're not waiting for somebody to hand it to you. You have to be willing. So like finding people who believe that and who have that in their heart would be my advice.
Yeah. And I think also it's the more you do it, the more, like, one of the things that happens, this happens to me, I'm sure it happens to you, is I start to hear about people from multiple people. 3 people tell me, go see this short. I heard that was an incredible short. I love this short. You got to see this short. That's the thing that, I heard about Ben Zeitlin from Sundance. I heard about it from Wesleyan people, and I heard about him from David Gordon Green, who had given a prize to his short film at the Austin Film Festival the year before I ever saw Beasts of Southern Wild or met Ben. That happens all the time. And I think that happens through ways that you can't predict. I got my job at Searchlight from the person who actually hired me. Claudia Lewis had come before Searchlight existed. She had come to see the short films Miguel and I were making when he was at AFI. She also, somebody told her, a producer who's a kind of colleague of ours, who, unbeknownst to me, she was looking for somebody, and they said, "Oh, you should look at Matthew, see if he might be the right person for you." That kind of thing, and that's true on a kind of executive level and jobs, but it's also true creatively. People talk about short films, people talk about people they like or that they're inspired by, or things they've seen, or somebody they just met who they love just personally and think you might vibe with. And I think for all of those things, it's all about building relationships. And the more and more kind of authentic those relationships are, the more over time they're going to help you.
Well, I say that's a great note to end with. You heard it here from the head of Searchlight. Be authentic, and actually taking all cynicism away. I think that's the best advice that you can give to anyone that wants to get into this. Build relationships in an authentic way. You will find. Matthew, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but thank you very much. I hope it's helpful, and great to see you, Miguel. And thank you very much for doing this.
Yes, and thank you to Film Independent, and thanks everybody for tuning in.